All right, everyone. I feel like I'm going to have a lot to say on this review today. This is of the Archon Type B, and a lot of you are probably familiar with this gun, especially if you shoot mostly striker fire-oriented guns. And for some of you, you don't know what it is. But for me, I will tell you, this is a gun that I've actually been fascinated by for quite a while, and I've just never had the chance to get my hands on one and shoot it. I will tell you, it is a gun that I debated buying as it was coming out, and for some reason I just never did. But it's a really, really interesting gun. And the first thing that you will of course notice when you see this is it's a little bit wild looking, right? Like, it's a little bit of a wild looking gun. And I gotta tell you, I think it's cool. Like, I think it's cool. The first thing I thought of this was, this is a gun whose looks is designed for a movie, okay? Like, specifically like a Michael Bay movie, where you go, snot drip there. Like a Michael Bay movie, where like a Transformers kind of scenario where you go, it's taking place in like a high-tech kind of environment, maybe a little futuristic, not so futuristic that guns are shooting fucking laser beams out of it, but futuristic enough that like a revolver is gonna look a little dated. That's the kind of pistol you put in a movie like that. Like Optimus Prime and I don't know, whoever the other robots, Transformers are, like their human counterparts. I feel like this is the kind of thing that they would shoot in those movies. So you might look at it and think, it looks a little weird. I gotta tell you, I think it looks very, very cool. I think it's a very, very handsome gun. But before we start diving into opinion and all that good stuff, let's actually break down a bit of what's going on with this gun. Okay, let's break this bad boy down a little bit. So first things first, $900 gun. That comes with the black rear fiber optic front sight. If you want night sights, it's $1,000, which lends me to my point, as I've been discussing lately, when did tritium become so lame and fibers become so cool? Maybe it's because it's quite a bit cheaper and manufacturers don't want to spend the money on night sights. Different story for a different day. But $900 or $1,000. A real pro that I think the Archon has going for it comes with 4 mags. And another video we will be filming today, it was a total opposite scenario in terms of what the gun came with. So coming with 4 mags, I think is a big plus. Mag capacity, standard flush fit mags are gonna be 15 rounds. And then they also send it, or at least the one that I have, also came with a 17 rounder. So your 17 rounder, very much like a Glock, you can still use the longer mags. They're just gonna hang out the bottom a bit. So it comes with 4 mags, very cool. I think a hallmark feature of this gun is the grip texture. Again, my hunch is it's one of those things you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. And when I first got this, typically, here's how my review process goes. I'll try to get the gun in about a week in advance, and I'll literally spend a day or two with this thing just like out on my counter as I'm working, or like on the sofa with me as I'm watching TV at night. And I'll just kind of look at it, process, and go, what do I think of it? And this is one that especially I had to do that with because it is a bit funky and unique. And so I looked at the grip texture, and when I first saw it, I thought, it's very odd. You know, it's very, very odd. And then I started looking up, well, what's the point of it? Is this just style, or is this designed for a specific function? And the answer is yes, it's designed for a function. So when you look at these little grid texture pattern thingies that are on the grip, they all go in different directions, which is interesting. So the point of it is supposed to be that as you shoot and the gun's recoiling, that grid texture is supposed to dig into your hand and somehow counteract what the pistol is trying to do to keep the gun more flat. I don't know that it does that. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, as I'm shooting the gun today, I like it. I think it's cool. I'm actually not trying to insult the grip texture. I'm just telling you, I don't know that it's counteracting the biomechanics of your hand and all this kind of shit. Like, that sounds a little out there to me, but I do think it's cool. And they also add it up here by your thumbs. Not super functional, but you get a little traction on that when you shoot. Overall, I like it. I just think it may not do exactly what it's, you know, labeled to do. Another one of the hallmarks, of course, is going to be that, so according to Archon, this has the lowest bore access of any production pistol. Now, that may have been the case when this came out, may still be the case. I just know that obviously, you know, CZ in particular comes to mind, but like there's some other guns that do have very low bore access now. So is that still true? I would tend to think yes. Otherwise, that their website saying that it does would be, you know, not super accurate, but someone else can determine that. But it does have a low bore access, so you can see where that gun's gonna fit on your hand. And it's nice, and we're going to come back to that in a bit. You've got an undercut here on the trigger. The mag release is of particular interest to me. As a lefty, the mag release is ambi, okay? And it's a very cool system. I'll just show you real brief how this thing works. Take the mag out, put the mag in reverse. Mag release falls out, you drop it back in the other way, you're done. Like, it's actually a very, very cool little system, even if I goof it up. And there you go, your mag's back in, right? Pretty cool system. A couple other feature things. So obviously you get that low bore access. The trigger, straight up the trigger's money, okay? On a polymer, on a striker fire gun, that trigger, I love it, I gotta tell you. So there's a few stages to it though, right? So there is some super obvious just play there that's in the trigger before you hit anything. Then you hit a wall, and then we've got a little mush beyond the wall, and then it breaks. And then the reset is really, really nice, right? So reset I find to be great. Even though there is some mush in the trigger, it's very smooth. Like, it's not like gritty, you know, like some shitty Glock triggers where you're just like, man, it's just like it's like trying to pull through like a gravel pool in a trigger. You're just bumping along until eventually the gun breaks. This isn't like that. There is some mush, but it's very, very smooth mush. It's a very predictable trigger. I really like the trigger, I gotta tell you. Trigger I find to be very cool. I wish that they could do a trigger like that in a Glock. Beyond that, obviously you've got this sort of, I don't know, the slide pattern has this sort of cutout here, and I can only assume that's for a natural place to be able to do press checks. I think it's cool. Again, another design thing where you look at it and you go, well, that pistol looks different than other pistols, and that's part of it, and I think it looks very cool, and it is nice for if you know, like, can you obviously do a press check here? Sure, but like, I think that's very, very cool. You've got serrations rear, serrations front. Another thing related to the grip, so there's this, they called it a tendon. The tendon that essentially what this thing is doing is when you grip the pistol, this little notch here is digging into, I assume, like this tendon that's here on your hand, and it's essentially activating the muscle in your hand more, so you're going to get a better grip on the pistol and better mitigate recoil. Again, I don't know. You know, I can't. And I literally was just, before we were filming, was sitting here going like, do I feel like a tendon's activate? Like, I can't identify anything there. Maybe they have some like fucking physical therapy people on staff who are working on this stuff. I don't know. I can't honestly tell you that makes any difference, nor does the grip texture make any difference to me. This I could live without. I just don't care one way or another. The beaver tail, I do think that's kind of cool, just because it's going to prevent any slide bite from really ever happening. But I do like the grip texture. I just don't find it particularly effective in terms of doing what it's supposed to do. Same with this. The sights I do, you know, standard fronts, fiber optic front sight, nothing, you know, special there, pretty standard stuff. I do like the rear sight a lot. There's a really distinct ledge on this, so I mean, you could rack that off of anything. I mean, there's just, you could, I mean, like, you know, that's a mushy forearm, you know, and it'll rack off of that. So I do like that rear sight quite a bit. Okay, a couple other little quickie things. There's an integrated mag well, which I haven't been doing a ton of reloads just because I don't have a holster and a mag carrier for this, but the little integrated mag well, very slight, but it is nice. The front sight is the same thing as a Glock front sight, so if you have a preference on what kind of sights you run on your Glock, if you wanted to run some, you know, tritium or whatever, it's not going to be a proprietary front sight, which is nice. But that said, that's specs, and now it's time to shift over to Jake's Opinion Corner. But before we do that, let's take a word from one of our sponsors.
Hey, big boy. Do you know what turns me on? A guy who owns a house. Do you know what turns me off? Having to smash in your mother's basement because she's a stupid hag that didn't want to give me a chance just because I didn't go to college.
Let's go ahead and just wrap it up.
So anyway, call 1911 Syndicate if you want to buy a house. They breed excellence.
Let's venture down opinion land on this kind of thing. This really isn't going to be opinion at first. So I feel like I have so many thoughts on this gun because it's interesting. And part of the problem with this gun, and there's a lot that I like about it, but there's also some things that I do think are problems. Part of the problem with it, which is why more people don't have it, is these guys got off to a very, very rocky start. And what I mean by that was a handful of years ago at SHOT Show, I remember seeing this gun or seeing photos of it or something like that, right? It was announced. And at that time, if I remember correctly, it was the PMG Strike 1 or Type B or whatever the model name was, but it was from PMG. And you were like, okay, cool, new gun coming out. It wasn't a new gun. It was it was the old Arsenal Type B or Strike A or one of the fucking, someone correct me in the comments, but it was the Arsenal Strike 1. I think that was it, Arsenal Strike 1. And so it's a little confusing because you were seeing this and it's like, isn't that the Arsenal Strike 1? But it's called PMG, and you're like, okay, cool, fuck it, just go with it, you know? And then a handful of months later, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever, PMG was gone, and then it was called the Arsenal, I think, Type B. And you're like, what happened to PMG? Why is it Arsenal now? And then like another 6 months later, that was gone, and then it was the Archon Type B, which is how it now is with us today. And my point to that is, as a consumer, and what you have to keep in mind, right, I didn't buy this gun, it wasn't even given to me to test from Archon. It's just on loan from a local friend, right, who was like, hey, can I shoot that? I would like to shoot that and do a video on it. So from a consumer perspective, they got off to a rough start, because if I see a new gun company and they change their name 3 times in the course of a year, I start getting a little skeptical. That's just the honest truth, okay? So they had that, and I think that's part of the reason that this gun has never really fully taken off and is still kind of remained a niche gun, is because I think, speaking on behalf of a lot of consumers who were really interested in this, we got a little iffy with some of the early stuff that was going on. Now, here's the other thing, and it's kind of well, actually, before we go in that, there's another thing that is almost just kind of comical to me. That's that I think the gun has a little bit of an identity crisis in terms of, where the hell is this thing from? Because right here on the grip, it says made in Germany. Right here on the slide, it says Hungary. Like, not like I'm hungry, like Hungary, right? And then on the barrel, it says Baltimore, Maryland, which, besides crab cakes, I didn't even know that anything else came from fucking Baltimore. You know what I'm saying? So, like, a lot of shit coming from a lot of different places. Who knows where the mags are from? Made in, nothing. They're made somewhere, though. But, so, a little bit of a location identity crisis. But here's the big point. I want to make sure I read this properly. Guess who brought notes today? Here's what I wrote down. This is just from the website, so nothing super secret here. He goes, the gun is a completely different shooting experience. Okay, so that's what's listed on their website, and I think that's being attributed to the fact that we've got the grip texture and the low bore access and this thing that's making my tendons work better and yada, 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 right? And here's the best way I can describe it to you. Have you ever gone to see a movie where you go, that's a good movie, but the trailer was like, they said it was gonna change your life, and like, you know, it was just gonna be the best thing you've ever seen in a movie theater, and you go, Unfortunately, you hyped it a little beyond what you could even reasonably expect to deliver on, and despite having a good product, I think it's a little overhyped, because when you start to say something like completely new shooting experience or whatever I just said, you go, okay, bold words, like really bold words. So if you're gonna say that, you've got to make sure like, yo, this thing is fucking tits, you know what I mean? So look, my experience of shooting it is, I like it. I actually am quite fond of it. I think the grip texture is very cool. I'm a big fan of the trigger, and it shoots pretty smooth. The low bore axis thing, if I'm being honest with you, it feels kind of like a Glock to me. Like it doesn't really feel notably softer than most striker fire guns that I've shot. Like, I mean, if I compare it to a Glock, which would be kind of the, you know, the gold standard that most of us know and are used to shooting, go, yeah, it feels kind of like a Glock when I shoot it. That's not a knock on this, even though I guess you could interpret that way. It's saying, hey, shoots good. I like the trigger, like the sights, like the grip, gun solid. But I think you overpromised a little bit on how unique it is, right? It's great. It's not a totally different shooting experience. It's like a good striker fire gun. Like that's the honest truth. The cool thing is, I think you could buy one of these at $900 and go, I don't really need to do anything to it. There's nothing that, as I'm here shooting this today, there's nothing I'm going, unlike a Glock where you go, okay, there's plenty of things, minus the new Gen 5s that I think are pretty solid out of the box. There's really nothing that I am seeing as I'm looking at this and shooting this where I go, okay, well, that definitely has to be fixed. I don't have that. I don't need to stipple it. It's essentially stippled. It's just different. Trigger is good. Sights are good, which would probably be the big three things that most of us would do on a Glock. Give me some texture, give me some sights, right? And maybe give me a better trigger. I think all three of those things are good to go here. So I feel like this is a very, it's almost a very tough review for me, because I had to go into this thing. I had not shot this gun prior to today. Like these are my first rounds on it. And my hope was that this thing is going to shoot so flat and it's going to be so incredible that it's just like, it's a love affair gun for me. And the truth is, it shoots good. It doesn't shoot life-changingly good. I like it. I would potentially buy one, but it's not going to change my life. Like, it's a fun gun. So take that for what it's will. Take that for what you will. There's some pros, there's some cons. Most of it is a little too much hype to even realistically expect to deliver on that. Peace, America. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday or whatever day this comes out. And stay COVID-free, wear your masks, unless you're not retarded, in which case you don't have to wear a mask. All right, see you, everyone.